I spent about 20 minutes looking around the house for, I must have a little black box, and I don't. So, no real opening gag. The Power of Three. This is another episode that I think is overhated and over-maligned. There's actually a fair amount that I like about this episode, and especially going back and rewatching it and knowing what's coming and realizing how much of the impact of Angels Take Manhattan is built on the foundation laid in this episode. I think there's a lot to like here. There are issues. I'll get to them. So, I love the core concept of this for multiple reasons. There's a few different things going on here, and most of them I really like. I like this technique for the invasion where these boxes just show up and do nothing for months so that people don't take them seriously anymore. They ignore them. They use them as paperweights. It's like, oh, look, it's a cube. What a brilliant idea. That's weird and bizarre, and that's an alien concept. That's what I love about that, is that it's a way of infiltrating and attacking a planet that humans wouldn't think of. It's an alien thought process, so I love that right off the bat. I like the idea of the Doctor having to stick around on the planet and keep an eye on these things, and he's bored. I love that. I think that works especially well with a Doctor as high energy as Matt Smith's Doctor. That's terrific. So I'm down for all of that. I like how it is examining the way in which Amy and Rory are maturing and how they're kind of ready for normal life to start. And that's kind of what I mean by factoring in laying groundwork for Angels in Manhattan. So we'll get to that episode when we get to it. But I think as sad as what happens there is, I think it helps soften deliberately, I think it helps soften the blow by giving you this episode as reassurance of Amy and Rory together will be okay, even without the Doctor. It shows how they aren't dependent on him, how they enjoy him, they like being with him, Amy especially, but they're ready for just life. And this episode deals with the idea of a home life and what's left back on Earth for the companions in a way that is far more interesting to me than the home dramatics that, say, Davies kept dealing with. Because the way Davies would tackle this sort of thing was always, Rose has her mother who's back on Earth, and Martha has her parents who are back on Earth, and Donna has her mother. Lots of parents. But like that to me is not an interesting way to address the Earth life of a companion. But addressing the fact that they are physically older than their friends because they basically have months worth of additional living that they've done in other points in time, and how that is affecting their relationships and their perceptions and their sense of self and the world around them. And Brian, asking him, how long were you just gone? Because they came back and, I like Rory's dad being onto the Doctor and what he's doing. And I love the honesty of the Doctor's answer to Brian about what has happened to other companions in the past. I think that's really sweet. I think there is a lot that works really well here. I like Kate Stewart. I love her introduction on this. I like that the Doctor clocks her pretty quickly. I love that the Brigadier has a legacy in unit. I love her attitude, her approach, her eagerness to work with the Doctor, but at the same time, the no-nonsense thing she's got going on. Some of her later appearances aren't nearly as good, but she's got a great introduction in this. However, we have to kind of get to the big elephant in the room when it comes to the problem with this thing. And that's the tail end and the explanation and resolution. Or actually, even before we get to that, can we just address like the orderlies or nurses or whatever they were with like the black things in their mouth? They look like they were... It looked like somebody hit pause mid-transformation of the empty child from Series 1. I don't know what the point of them was. Like, I really don't. I don't... They're just there to be a threat of some... I don't know. Don't get it at all. It's not like I don't get it, like, what are those things? No, I get what they are, but narratively, I don't know why they're there. And then there's this whole idea of this entire thing being orchestrated by this legendary thing that the Doctor has heard stories about from his childhood on Gallifrey. And there's a lot of problems with this. So, first off, it's pulling the basically trying to stop the spread of humanity, which is not new. Like that's really well-trodden ground for science fiction. And I mean, even relatively recently, you know, that's what Q and the Continuum kept sort of circling back to, whether or not they wanted to do that in, you know, starting with Star Trek: The Next Generation. And then there's this whole idea of like, this thing is a legendary being that, you know, it's a Gallifreyan legend, and the Doctor just beats it. I'm sorry, what? Now, it actually in that way bears more than a passing resemblance to Can You Hear Me from Series 12. And I love Can You Hear Me? And while I understand the issue I just talked about from Power of Three, some people have that same issue with Can You Hear Me? I don't have an issue with it there, although I do see why some people do. But the reason why I give it a pass in Can You Hear Me is because Can You Hear Me, it has a lot going on thematically and metaphorically and allegorically that the resolution for me fits with the theming of everything else going on. Here, while there is more going on under the surface than just there are boxes and it's some kind of invasion, because, you know, we're establishing a whole lot about Amy and Rory's relationship, their dependency on the Doctor, or the fading of their dependency, how much the Doctor needs them, the nature of that bond and everything. So there is stuff going on the surface, but it's character stuff. It's not thematic stuff. So there isn't a thematic justification for why that conclusion goes down the way it is. There's a thematic reason why Can You Hear Me happens the way it does. That's not really the case here. This is just a really rushed conclusion because they needed a way to wrap this thing up. You really do get the feeling that they came in with a setup for the boxes, and it takes a while, and it's like the slow invasion or whatever it is that it gets referenced as at the beginning, but they didn't know how they were going to wrap it up, and so they spent like 37 minutes just dwelling with this, like, ooh, what's going on, and then 8 minutes wrapping it up real quick, and there we go. Move on. It was like they came up with a... They spent a lot of time figuring out a really cool setup, and then, like, 10 minutes figuring out how they were going to wrap it up. And having it be this big legendary thing that is this easily defeated, like, there's no reason for it to be that. You know, scale it down. Introducing a threat that big and grand and legendary even to the Doctor, and then having it so thoroughly whooped so quickly, there's no reason for that to be the case here. So that is an issue. And I guess some people find the stuff even before the conclusion a little bit boring. I don't, especially on a rewatch. I like it even more. But that does make that ending all the more frustrating because honestly, the stuff prior to them going on the ship where this stuff's all being puppeted is really good. Like, the stuff with Kate's good, Amy and Rory's good, Brian's good, the Doctor's good, the boxes are neat as a concept. Like, it's all so good, and then the ending doesn't ruin it, but the ending does flatten it. Like, everything else is up here and the ending's down here. And it's not, like, enough of a nosedive to, like, drag everything down and, like, ruin it, but it does mean that, you know, the last 8 minutes of this episode are the least interesting and engaging, and that's never a good thing. So, Power 3, mixed bag this time around. What'd you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something on down in the comments. Let's talk about it. A bunch of stuff to do. Like, subscribe, hit me up on Patreon. I'd super appreciate it. I'm up over 250 supporters on there, which is amazing. Let's keep it going. And of course, all the usual things. Then there's links and things for you to click and merch to buy and et cetera, et cetera. But you also don't have to because end of the day, you're the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.